A lot of people wonder how trauma happens. Trauma is, in simplest terms, a reaction to stress that we don't know how to deal with. So it's no wonder that a lot of traumas originate in childhood. Because after all, as a child, you don't know how to deal with the world in general most of the time. As you're learning how to deal with different stressors, you rely on your parents, you rely on adults around you taking care of you to help you learn how to deal with the stress of life, how to process events. And so, when it comes to things like phobias, you may have been an infant or a 2 year old, 3 year old, whatever, before the age of 7, before you can actually begin to process the world in a conscious state. You're constantly learning. And so our bodies have this built in system that helps us to survive. And that system gets programmed before the age of 7, usually around the age of like 3 to 4 years old. That's when the system is starting to like really kick in. But so imagine as a child, you're sitting in a high chair or a stroller. There's no adults around, and a vicious looking dog comes up and starts barking at you. In fact, it may just be a friendly little puppy yapping away. But to a 2 year old child, they don't know what's going on. They see hair, teeth, and loud noise. So the physiology in that child reacts in a fight or flight sort of reaction, except the child can't flee and the child can't fight. So they are at that point helpless. They are helpless to deal with the situation. They do not understand what is happening. And that event can get recorded in the subconscious mind in that internal survival mechanism as a phobia of dogs. Or you may have a situation where the parents are fighting and screaming at each other. Now, the child is relying on the parents to feed it, clothe it, take care of it, and make sure it survives. And so when it sees screaming, yelling, and all sorts of discontent, again, the child's physiology reacts as this is fear, this is panic, this is danger. And that can lead to all sorts of relationship problems in the future. So, this is where a lot of our traumas, fears, anxieties, those subconscious things that we start reacting to situations in a way that we don't know how to deal with. And then, as adults, even a similar smell, a similar voice, or a similar tone of voice, even the temperature of the air can trigger those same exact survival feelings because the body knows that the last time this happened, I survived it by reacting this way. And so the reaction comes again in order to help you survive it. Even though consciously, like, for example, if you have a phobia of dogs or snakes, you may very well know that this particular dog or this particular snake isn't going to hurt you. You can consciously know that, but your subconscious system doesn't understand that. It doesn't understand you trying to override that instinct. And so it'll kick in the adrenaline, it'll kick in the stress reaction and the fear, and you start freaking out and you can't control it. So, what happens with PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder? After you've gone through a trauma, similar events re trigger that trauma. But what you have to understand is even with people like war veterans who had to do some horrible things, they had to survive some horrible situations where they felt helpless, powerless, unable to escape, and unable to do anything about the horrible situation that they were in. Those traumas tend to build upon prior traumas. So, someone who hasn't been traumatized as an infant, which I don't think there's too many people on the planet that haven't been in some way, shape, or form, whether it be getting lost in a shopping mall or just wondering where are your parents and they're not there, or like I said, if you're living in a home where you don't feel safe, loved, cared for, and protected, then when you go out into the world as an adult, similar situations will stack upon that original trauma and intensify it. And so then every time you get through that situation or similar situation, similar trigger, that trauma gets reinforced and reinforced to the point where some people just literally feel like they can't deal with the world at all. And what we do with hypnotherapy is we go back and try and locate the original source of that trauma. So you don't have to relive horrible situations that you can remember, because those situations that you can remember were simply triggers from something that you can't remember. Because if you could remember the traumatic event consciously, then you diffuse it immediately, because as a responsible adult with life experience, if you see a child and there is some wasp flying around and buzzing in their face, and they are clearly distressed, you will know what to do, and you will know to tell the child, it's okay, it's just a bug, it's not going to hurt you, you'll be fine. But if you think back in your own memory where you have had such an experience, consciously, you can tell yourself, oh, that was silly. I didn't know that I was safe. And really, there's no trigger for that stress. There's no unconscious trigger. So when you experience trauma consciously, it won't affect you nearly as much as when you experience it unconsciously. So these traumas that we experience through life stack up on each other, and they're like a little Jenga pile, let's say. There's a little piece at the foundation that you probably don't even remember happening, but physiologically your body remembers that feeling. And then the next time something like that happens, your body reacts physiologically in the same way. And then the next time it happens, your body physiologically reacts in the same way. And so these traumas stack up upon each other like a stack of Jenga bricks. And with hypnotherapy, what we can do is take you back, have you communicate with that subconscious memory, that thing you can't remember, find it so that you can remember it. And how we diffuse it is by having you, as an adult, explain to that subconscious element, hey, it's okay. You're fine. There's nothing wrong. You know how to deal with the situation now. And that right there literally acts like pulling that bottom stack, pulling that bottom piece out of that Jenga pile, and the entire tower collapses. And that's not a bad thing. So, what we do with hypnotherapy is we don't go through each individual piece in that stack of Jenga tiles. Is that copyrighted? Maybe I can't use that analogy. Anyway, what we go through, so you don't have to go through and start at the top of the pile and take off each brick one by one. In fact, that's what traditional therapy does, where they have you think about the traumatic event you just had and how it got triggered and figure out how you could have dealt with it, why it's okay. And then when you're feeling okay about that one, then they go down to the next piece and the next piece and the next piece. And that's a process that can literally take some people years. If you've ever known someone that spent years in therapy, that's why, is because they start and the therapist can't really tell the person, well, here's how you could have dealt with the situation. And that's true. I can't tell you how you should have dealt with your life situation. Only you know how to do that. But what I can do is guide you through the process. So instead of having to take that Jenga stack apart piece by piece by piece by piece, we use hypnosis to go all the way down to the bottom of the stack, find that main supporting element, that main supporting piece, and take that out. And when we take that out, the entire stack of trauma just collapses, and you can pick up the pieces and put them in a box and not worry about it. In fact, a lot of people, after having that traumatic event de-traumatized, will simply laugh. Laughter, it's a release. You literally feel that weight coming off of you, because that huge stack of stress, of anxiety, of bad reactions, of trauma, it just simply collapses as if it was never there in the first place.